been a canary, she told all her story. The gypsy had often seen the young prince pass by, with his gun on his shoulder, when he was going after crows. She was too ugly and ragged for him ever to have noticed her, but Titty on her side had admired him, though she thought he might well have been a little fatter. Dear, dear, she said to herself, so he likes yellow women. Why, I am yellow too, and if I could only think of a way... It was not long before she did think of it. What? Cried the sly Twitty. They are coming with great pomp to fetch you, and you are not afraid to show yourself to so many fine lords and ladies with your hair down like that? Get down at once, my poor child, and let me dress your hair for you. The innocent Zizi came down at once, and stood by Titty. The gypsy began to comb her long brown locks, when suddenly she drew a pin from her stays, and, just as the titmouse digs its beak into the heads of linnets and larks, Titty dug the pin into the head of Zizi. No sooner did Zizi feel the prick of the pin than she became a bird again, and, spreading her wings, she flew away. That was neatly done, said the gypsy. The prince will be clever if he finds his bride. And, arranging her dress, she seated herself on the grass to await Desiree. 12. Meanwhile, the prince was coming as fast as his horse could carry him. He was so impatient that he was always full 50 yards in front of the lords and ladies sent by Tubby to bring back Zizi. At the sight of the hideous gypsy, he was struck dumb with surprise and horror. Ah me, said Titty, so you don't know your poor Zizi? While you were away, the wicked witch came and turned me into this. But if you only have the courage to marry me, I shall get back my beauty. And she began to cry bitterly. Now the good-natured Desiree was as soft-hearted as he was brave. Poor girl, he thought to himself. It is not her fault, after all, that she has grown so ugly. It is mine. Oh, why did I not follow the old man's advice? Why did I leave her alone? And besides, it depends on me to break the spell, and I love her too much to let her remain like this. So he presented the gypsy to the lords and ladies of the court, explaining to them the terrible misfortune which had befallen his beautiful bride. They all pretended to believe it, and the ladies at once put on the false princess the rich dresses they had brought for Zizi. She was then perched on the top of a magnificent ambling palfrey, and they set forth to the castle. But, unluckily, the rich dress and jewels only made Titty look uglier still, and Desiree could not help feeling hot and uncomfortable when he made his entry with her into the city. Bells were pealing, chimes ringing, and the people filling the streets and standing at their doors to watch the procession go by, and they could hardly believe their eyes as they saw what a strange bride their prince had chosen. In order to do her more honor, Tubby came to meet her at the foot of the great marble staircase. At the sight of the hideous creature, he almost fell backwards. "What?" he cried. "Is this the wonderful beauty?" "Yes, father, it is she," replied Desiree with a sheepish look. "But she has been bewitched by a wicked sorceress, and will not regain her beauty until she is my wife." "Does she say so? Well, if you believe that, you may drink cold water and think it bacon," the unhappy Tubby answered crossly. But all the same, as he adored his son, he gave the gypsy his hand and led her to the great hall, where the bridal feast was spread. 13. The feast was excellent, but Desiree hardly touched anything. However, to make up, the other guests ate greedily, and, as for Tubby, nothing ever took away his appetite. When the moment arrived to serve the roast goose, there was a pause, and Tubby took the opportunity to lay down his knife and fork for a little. But as the goose gave no sign of appearing, he sent his head carver to find out what was the matter in the kitchen. Now this was what had happened. While the goose was turning on the spit, a beautiful little canary hopped on the sill of the open window. "Good morning, my fine cook," she said in a silvery voice to the man who was watching the roast. "Good morning, lovely golden bird," replied the chief of the scullions, who had been well brought up. "I pray that heaven may send you to sleep," said the golden bird, "and that the goose may burn so that there may be none left for Titty." And instantly the chief of the scullions fell fast asleep, and the goose was burnt to a cinder. When he awoke, he was horrified, and gave orders to pluck another goose, and to stuff it with chestnuts, and put it on the spit. While it was browning at the fire, Tubby inquired for his goose a second time. The master cook himself mounted to the hall to make his excuses, and to beg his lord to have a little patience. Tubby showed his patience by abusing his son. As if it wasn't enough, he grumbled between his teeth, that the boy should pick up a hag without a penny, but the goose must go and burn now. It isn't a wife that he has brought me, it is famine herself. 15. While the master cook was upstairs, the golden bird came again to perch on the window-sill, and called in his clear voice to the head scullion who was watching the spit, "Good morning, my fine scullion." "Good morning, lovely golden bird," replied the scullion, whom the master cook had forgotten in his excitement to warn. "I pray heaven," went on the canary, "that it will send you to sleep, and that the goose may burn, so that there may be none left for Titty." And the scullion fell fast asleep, and when the master cook came back he found the goose as black as the chimney. In a fury he woke the scullion, who, in order to save himself from blame, told the whole story. "That accursed bird," said the cook. "It will end by getting me sent away. Come, some of you, and hide yourselves, and if it comes again, catch it and wring its neck." He spitted a third goose, lit a huge fire, and seated himself by it. The bird appeared a third time, and said, "Good morning, my fine cook." "Good morning, lovely golden bird," replied the cook, as if nothing had happened. And at the moment that the canary was beginning, "I pray heaven that it may send," a scullion who was hidden outside rushed out and shut the shutters. The bird flew into the kitchen. Then all the cooks and scullions sprang after it, knocking at it with their aprons. At length one of them caught it just at the very moment that Tubby entered the kitchen, waving his sceptre. He had come to see for himself why the goose had never made its appearance. The scullion stopped at once, just as he was about to wring the canary's neck. 15. "Will someone be kind enough to tell me the meaning of all this?" cried the Lord of Avesnes. "Your Excellency, it is the bird," replied the scullion, and he placed it in his hand. "Nonsense! What a lovely bird!" said Tubby, and in stroking its head he touched a pin that was sticking between its feathers. He pulled it out, and lo, the canary at once became a beautiful girl with a golden skin, who jumped lightly to the ground. "Gracious, what a pretty girl!" said Tubby. "Father, it is she! It is Zizi!" exclaimed Desiree, who entered at this moment. And he took her in his arms, crying, "My darling Zizi, how happy I am to see you once more." "Well, and the other one?" asked Tubby. The other one was stealing quietly to the door. "Stop her!" called Tubby. "We will judge her cause at once." And he seated himself solemnly on the oven, and condemned Titty to be burned alive. After which the lords and cooks formed themselves in lines, and Tubby betrothed Desiree to Zizi. 16. The marriage took place a few days later. All the boys in the countryside were there, armed with wooden swords and decorated with epaulets made of gilt paper. Zizi obtained Titty's pardon, and she was sent back to the brickfields, followed and hooted at by all the boys. And this is why today the country boys always throw stones at a titmouse. On the evening of the wedding day, all the larders, cellars, cupboards, and tables of the people, whether rich or poor, were loaded as if by enchantment with bread, wine, beer, cakes and tarts, roast larks, and even geese, so that Tubby could not complain any more that his son had married Famine. Since that time, there has always been plenty to eat in that country, and since that time, too, you see in the midst of the fair-haired, blue-eyed women of Flanders a few beautiful girls, whose eyes are black, and whose skins are the color of gold. They are the descendants of Zizi. End of chapter 25. The Enchanted Canary. Recording by Bill Rusum of TalkingTraffic.org.